Reportedly classified documents have been uncovered revealing secret meetings between Ottawa officials and Western leaders discussing plans to separate from the rest of Canada. These confidential papers show detailed strategies for breaking away and forming a new alliance with other Western powers, all happening behind closed doors while citizens remain completely unaware. What exactly are these leaders planning? How long has this secret plot been developing? And most importantly, how will this affect everyday Canadians if these plans move forward? Let's unravel what these classified documents reveal and what they could mean for the future of Canada as we know it. Now, current political The political landscape in Canada has been through some major changes lately. After a close election, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party managed to hold on to power, though they lost their majority in Parliament. This means they now need support from other parties to pass laws and keep governing. The election results painted a clear picture of a divided country. If you looked at a map of Canada after the votes were counted, you'd see almost all of the western provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and most of Manitoba, colored conservative blue. Meanwhile, much of eastern Canada, especially around big cities like Toronto, Montreal, and in Atlantic Canada, stayed liberal red. This split caused immediate reactions. In Alberta, Premier Jason Kenney expressed deep disappointment, saying Western voices were being ignored again. Many people in Alberta and Saskatchewan felt that their concerns about the oil and gas industry weren't being heard in Ottawa. The day after the election, hashtags like Wexit and Alberta separation started trending on social media. People were actually talking about the western provinces breaking away from Canada, similar to how the United Kingdom left the European Union with Brexit. The main issues driving this frustration include the carbon tax, which many Western Canadians see as harmful to their economy, and delays in building pipelines to get Alberta's oil to markets. The Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion has faced years of delays, and many blame the federal government for not doing enough to push it through. In response to the growing anger, Prime Minister Trudeau promised to address Western concerns and build bridges. He appointed Chrystia Freeland, one of his most trusted ministers, as Deputy Prime Minister with a special focus on improving federal-provincial relations. Meanwhile, Conservative Party leader Andrew Scheer, who won the popular vote but fewer seats than Trudeau, became the voice for Western frustration in Parliament. He called for the government to take concrete steps to address the economic challenges facing Alberta and Saskatchewan. The New Democratic Party, led by Jagmeet Singh, found itself in a powerful position despite losing seats. With the Liberals needing support to pass legislation, the NDP could push for policies like expanded healthcare coverage in exchange for their votes. Public opinion polls showed that about 1/3 of people in Alberta and Saskatchewan were at least somewhat supportive of the idea of separation, though most political experts didn't think it would actually happen. This tension between the western provinces and the federal government isn't new in Canadian history, but it reached a boiling point after this election. The question on everyone's mind became whether Canada's leaders could find a way to keep the country united while addressing the very real concerns of people across all regions. This growing frustration didn't happen overnight. It's the result of years, some would say decades, of decisions made in Ottawa that many in the West believe ignore their unique challenges and contributions. Rising Western alienation. For many years, people living in Western Canada, places like Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and parts of British Columbia, have felt like they're not being heard by the government in Ottawa. This feeling has been growing stronger lately, and think about it like this. Imagine if your family made decisions without asking what you thought, even though these decisions affected your daily life. That's how many Western Canadians feel about the federal government. Polls show this frustration clearly. In a recent survey, over 60% of Albertans said they don't think their province gets fair treatment from Ottawa. In Saskatchewan, similar numbers appear, with many people feeling their concerns are ignored. What are they upset about? A lot of it comes down to money and resources. Western provinces, especially Alberta, have huge oil and gas industries. These resources bring in billions of dollars, but many Westerners believe they don't see enough benefit from this wealth. Instead, they watch as money flows east to support programs in Ontario and Quebec. The energy industry is a big sore spot. When the federal government creates environmental rules that limit oil production or blocks new pipelines, Western workers worry about their jobs. The cancellation of projects like the Northern Gateway Pipeline and new restrictions on energy development have made many people angry. This isn't a new problem. Back in the 1980s, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's father, introduced the National Energy Program. This policy was meant to give the federal government more control over oil prices and production. Alberta was furious, seeing it as Eastern Canada stealing their resources. People still talk about this today. It's like an old wound that never fully healed. There's also the issue of representation. Since Ontario and Quebec have way more people, they have more seats in Parliament. This means Western concerns can get outvoted. Some Westerners feel like no matter who they elect, their voice is drowned out by the more populated Eastern provinces. The Wexit movement, Western exit, has grown from these frustrations. While most people don't actually want to separate from Canada, the movement shows how deep the anger runs. In Alberta, a 2019 poll found that 33% of residents thought separation from Canada would be good for their province. Even everyday symbols cause tension. When Western hockey teams play against Toronto or Montreal, it's not just a game. It sometimes feels like a battle between regions. Social media lights up with comments about how sports broadcasters favor Eastern teams. The COVID-19 pandemic made things worse. Many Westerners felt that federal relief programs were designed with Eastern businesses in mind, while Western industries struggled with different challenges. As this alienation grows, some Western leaders have started meeting privately to discuss how to push back against Ottawa. They talk about gaining more control over their resources, tax dollars, and even creating their own pension plans instead of relying on the Canada Pension Plan. For young people growing up in Western Canada today, this regional tension is part of their political education, something their parents and grandparents have experienced for decades, but which seems to be reaching a boiling point, and now that long-standing frustration has taken a dramatic turn, unveiling the secret documents. Last month, a bombshell hit the Canadian political scene when hundreds of confidential documents were leaked online. These papers, now known as the Western Liberty Files, appeared to show detailed plans by several provincial leaders from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and parts of British Columbia to potentially break away from Canada and form their own independent nation. The documents first appeared on a website called True North Freedom before spreading across social media platforms. They include meeting minutes, strategy memos, and even draft declarations of independence dating back 3 years. Government officials haven't confirmed if these papers are real, but they haven't completely denied it either. According to these files, the Western leaders have been meeting secretly in places like Calgary, Regina, and even once at a remote ranch in the Rocky Mountains. They've apparently discussed everything from how to take control of natural resources to what their new flag might look like. One of the most shocking documents is called Operation Prairie Freedom, a 50-page blueprint that outlines a 5-year plan to gradually separate from Canada. The plan includes steps like creating a Western pension plan to replace the Canada Pension Plan, establishing a regional police force, and even developing their own currency called the Western Dollar. The document suggests these leaders are frustrated about several issues: the federal carbon tax, restrictions on oil and gas development, and feeling like Ottawa doesn't listen to Western concerns. There's a lot of talk about how the West's oil money flows east, but Western provinces don't get enough say in how the country is run. Experts who've studied the documents point to a section called Resource Sovereignty that details plans to take full control of oil, gas, potash, and other natural resources currently under shared federal-provincial management. The leaders apparently believe these resources alone could support an independent Western nation. Another interesting part shows they've been reaching out to other countries to gauge support. There are mentions of unofficial meetings with representatives from the United States, United Kingdom, and even oil-rich nations like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. The source of the leak remains unknown. Some think it was an insider who became uncomfortable with the plans, while others believe it might have been a hacked email account. The RCMP has started an investigation into both the leak itself and the contents of the documents. What makes these documents particularly concerning is the level of detail. They include population statistics, economic projections, and even draft laws for the proposed new nation. There are also communication strategies for how to win public support, including plans to highlight federal policies that have hurt Western interests. Whether these documents are completely authentic or not, they've sparked serious conversations across Canada about Western alienation and the future of Confederation. As debates flare across the country, attention has turned to the people behind the movement. Profiles of key Western leaders. The secret documents reveal several key figures leading the Western separatist movement. These leaders come from different backgrounds but share a common goal: breaking away from Canada to form their own nation. Jason Kenney served as Alberta's premier from 2019 to 2022. Before that, he was a federal cabinet minister under Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Kenney belongs to the United Conservative Party, which formed when the Progressive Conservative and Wild Rose parties joined together. While Kenney publicly said he wanted Alberta to stay in Canada, the documents show private meetings where he discussed independence options. He often talked about the Alberta Advantage and how federal policies hurt his province's oil industry. Scott Moe became Saskatchewan's premier in 2018 as part of the Saskatchewan Party. The documents show Moe attended secret meetings with other Western leaders to discuss breaking away. In public, Moe complained about unfair treatment from Ottawa, especially regarding carbon taxes and energy policies. He created the Saskatchewan First strategy that, according to the leaked papers, was actually a first step toward independence. Brian Pallister led Manitoba as premier from 2016 to 2021 with the Progressive Conservative Party. Though Manitoba wasn't as vocal about separation as Alberta or Saskatchewan, the documents reveal Pallister joined discussions about a possible prairie nation. He focused on economic independence first, believing Manitoba's farming and manufacturing could support a new country. The documents also mention several unofficial leaders who pushed the separation agenda from outside government. Peter Downing founded Wexit Canada, now the Maverick Party, organizing rallies across the West. The papers show he received funding from unnamed business leaders with ties to the oil industry. Tamara Litch, who later became known for her role in the Freedom Convoy protests, appears in earlier documents as a key organizer for independence groups in Alberta. The papers reveal she helped coordinate communication between official government channels and grassroots supporters. Randy Hillier, though from Ontario, worked as a connection between Western separatists and Eastern sympathizers. The documents show he attended meetings in Calgary and Regina to discuss how to expand the movement beyond the prairie provinces. Business leaders also played important roles. According to the papers, Brett Wilson, a former Dragon's Den investor, provided financial backing for separation research. Oil executive Murray Edwards appears in meeting notes discussing how a new Western nation could build pipelines without federal approval. The documents reveal these leaders created a shared strategy called Western Shield that outlined steps toward independence. They planned to first demand more provincial powers, then hold referendums if Ottawa refused. They calculated that they would need at least 60% support from Western voters before making any official moves toward separation. What makes these revelations shocking is how these public figures said one thing to Canadians while secretly planning something completely different. The documents show they were much further along in their planning than anyone realized. Influence of external forces. The secret documents don't just reveal what Western Canadian leaders were doing, they show who was helping them from outside Canada. These external forces provided money, advice, and political support for the Western separation movement. Russia appears multiple times in the documents as an interested party. According to meeting notes from 2019, Russian officials met with representatives from Alberta and Saskatchewan in Zurich, Switzerland. The Russians offered to buy oil at premium prices from an independent Western Canada, bypassing Canadian federal regulations. One document mentions a Russian diplomat saying, "A divided Canada serves multiple strategic interests," though it doesn't explain exactly what those interests were. American oil companies show up frequently in the papers. Executives from 3 major Texas-based corporations attended planning sessions in Calgary. They promised investment money and pipeline partnerships if Western provinces broke away. The documents reveal that $15 million from these companies went to pro-separation media campaigns labeled as energy advocacy to hide their true purpose. Chinese government representatives took a different approach. Rather than openly supporting separation, they offered infrastructure deals through their Belt and Road Initiative. Notes from a meeting in Vancouver show Chinese officials discussing how an independent Western nation could become a priority partner for resource development without federal interference. The papers also reveal surprising European connections. A think tank based in Switzerland called the Institute for Regional Autonomy provided legal frameworks for how the Western provinces could declare independence. This institute received funding from wealthy individuals who would benefit from new resource deals with an independent Western Canada. Tech billionaire Peter Thiel's name appears in documents from 2020. He reportedly met with separation leaders in Montana and discussed creating special economic zones in a new Western nation that would have minimal regulations for technology companies. The documents show that foreign media played a role too. Several Russian and American news outlets ran stories highlighting Western Canadian grievances against Ottawa. These stories were coordinated with local separation groups to build public support. One email chain reveals a plan to time these stories stories with provincial elections to maximize impact on voters. Perhaps most concerning are the military implications. The papers mention discussions with former American military contractors about training a provincial security force that could later become a national defense force. These contractors provided advice on securing oil facilities and border crossings during a potential separation process. The documents also show how separatist leaders used international examples to build their case. They studied Scotland's independence movement, Catalonia's efforts to separate from Spain, and Brexit to learn tactics and messaging strategies. One planning document specifically mentions using the Quebec playbook but with energy instead of language as the emotional core. What makes these external influences particularly troubling is how hidden they were from Canadian citizens. While Western leaders publicly complained about legitimate issues like equalization payments and pipeline approvals, they were privately working with foreign entities whose interests might not align with those of everyday Canadians. The gap between public messaging and private action has left many Canadians feeling blindsided and worried. Implications for Canada's national unity. The secret plans for Western separation have sent shockwaves across the country. If Alberta, Saskatchewan, and parts of British Columbia actually tried to break away from Canada, the effects would touch every Canadian's life in big ways. First, let's talk money. Canada's economy works because different regions contribute different things. The western provinces are rich in oil, gas, and farmland. They send these resources to other parts of Canada, and in return, they get manufactured goods and services. If the West separated, both sides would lose this give-and-take relationship. For everyday Canadians, this could mean higher prices at the store. Gas might cost more in Ontario and Quebec, while Western Canadians might pay more for cars, furniture, and other items made in the East. Jobs could disappear as companies struggled to adapt to new borders and trade rules. The social impacts would be just as serious. Families spread across different provinces would suddenly find themselves living in different countries. Indigenous communities, whose traditional territories often cross provincial boundaries, could be divided by new national borders they never agreed to. Many Canadians feel a strong sense of national pride. The maple leaf, hockey, and universal healthcare are things that unite people from coast to coast. A Western separation would tear at this shared identity. Kids growing up in a separated West might develop a completely different sense of who they are compared to their Eastern cousins. The political fallout would be massive too. Canada's global influence would shrink overnight. Instead of being one of the world's largest countries with a seat at important international tables like the G7, there would be two smaller countries competing for attention on the world stage. The federal government isn't sitting still while these plans develop. Sources say Ottawa has created a special task force to counter separatist movements. Their playbook includes several strategies. First, they're offering economic incentives to keep the West happy. This includes promises of new pipelines, reduced regulations for oil companies, and more say for Western provinces in national economic decisions. Second, they're running a Hearts and Minds campaign, reminding Westerners of the benefits of being Canadian, from healthcare to international respect to military protection. Third, they're preparing legal arguments. Canada's constitution doesn't have a clear path for provinces to leave, unlike some other countries. Government lawyers believe they have strong legal grounds to block separation. Fourth, they're reaching out to moderate Western leaders who might help calm separatist feelings. Not everyone in the West supports breaking away, and the government is trying to amplify these voices. Some experts worry these efforts might be too little, too late. The anger in parts of the West has been building for years over issues like energy policy, equalization payments, and feeling ignored by Ottawa. What happens next depends on many factors. Will Western leaders push forward with separation plans? Will the federal government's strategies work? And perhaps most importantly, how will ordinary Canadians in all regions respond when they learn about these secret discussions? One thing is certain, Canada faces its greatest unity challenge since the 1995 Quebec referendum. The coming months will determine whether the world's second largest country remains whole or splits into pieces.